Next on the agenda is the engineer's report. Mike, I think we've asked our engineer not to come to this meeting this time. We're trying something new, see if we can be a little bit more efficient in our meeting structure, and the engineer is coming to the work sessions for extensive discussion, and then any motions that need to be made at our regular meeting will be taken care of by council. Okay, Mike?
Thank you. There are two items the engineer would normally address on tonight's agenda. The first is a handicap ramp removal at Lafayette and Lincoln Avenue. We talked about this before, and just for purposes of the record and public, this is a handicap ramp at Lafayette and Lincoln Avenue, which is problematic in its construction, is not used, and is generally concluded to be something to be removed. The residents in the area wish it so as well, and brought it to the attention of council earlier this year. The issue which had been most recently talked about was two things. First, can we do it ourselves? The answer is no. We need PennDOT's process for removal followed. And second, how much will it cost? What is before us tonight is the first part of it, which is the requirement for a pedestrian study. In work session, the estimated cost of a pedestrian study was found to be about $1,000. The question was, however, asked about whether or not we could have volunteers do what's called an actual count, that is to say, to see how many people within a designated period of hours during the day use the ramp, if any. And this is part of then a pedestrian study which we keep in our file and show to PennDOT if a question arises in the future about the basis and the reason why the ramp was removed. I'm glad to report that the borough engineer has advised that a volunteer can be used to basically sit and see if anybody uses the ramp, and that it can be done over a defined period of time, which is 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., considered the peak daytime period of time, as opposed to a 4-hour period of time, which would be greater. This will save us the engineering cost of having literally a professional sit and see if anybody uses the ramp during that period of time. The recommendation, however, is that such a volunteer come from the traffic committee, and Gerard has the good fortune of finding a volunteer to sit from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And select someone or ask someone or have somebody step forward to do that, and that would fulfill the requirement of the count. The count then, which probably will be 0, then goes into a formal pedestrian study report the engineer does finish, and that will be at a not-to-exceed cost of $600. So what is before the council this evening is a basic motion, if it is our wish, to authorize a completion of the pedestrian study for removal of the handicap ramp at Lafayette and Lincoln Avenue for not to exceed $600 upon receipt of the pedestrian count to be conducted by the traffic committee. And I'll make that motion.
Okay. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just curious, is it a particular day of the week that we need to do this count, and when would it be ideal to do it?
There's no designation. It's a good question. There's no designation as to what day of the week, but 11 to 1, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the time frame. So it is considered the peak lunch hour time, if you can believe that, at Lafayette and Lincoln. So pick a day of the week, and apparently that's all that will suffice.
Second question. If I'll bring this to the traffic committee if we pass this motion on Thursday night, but if I don't have a volunteer, do I count as part of the traffic committee to do this count?
I think that would be eminently acceptable. And we might even do a proclamation for that
Do you think
service.
we need to run that one by our solicitor?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm asking the question.
I mean, it's not an official position, so I don't believe that there would be anything preventing you from doing it.
You're a volunteer,
You're
as
a volunteer,
right now, anyway.
You're certainly.
I was hoping to have some leverage to get a volunteer. So, I think we'll get a volunteer for it. So.
Is this one of those cases where I didn't give you the answer you want? Sorry.
Okay, any other
The
discussion?
only one question, the cost that for not to exceed $600 is for just the removal?
No, I'm sorry. No, to be clear, the process is first for the actual count that Gerard just referred to being done, that 11 to 1 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That information is filled out on a sheet that the engineer will provide, probably will have zeros, and then that is supplied to the borough engineer, who then produces an actual pedestrian study on a format that PennDOT requires. So to your question, the completion of the report is a cost of $600.
Yeah, because I remember her stating some other costs that seemed much higher than that. for the-
Exactly, and I'm not going to address that now after the motion, the construction and removal, but perhaps the motion could be moved first.
I just have one suggestion, Gerard. You may want to include lunch with that project.
All the soda you can buy at CVS, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we have a motion. Any further discussion, this motion? Okay, if not, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
If I may, to the question that John just alluded to, separate and apart from the requirements being met to be allowed to remove the ramp is the cost of demolition and the cost of construction to recomplete the curb, to seed the area, and to basically finish it off. That is not before us tonight, and that would be sometime in hopefully the very near future. But the engineer advises that that is a job that would, in all likelihood, fall less than $4,000 and would not be a bid item, even a telephonic bid item, and we could take that up even at our next meeting. But that would be the next step to the action required of us.
Okay. Do you want to speak to the Frost Lane project, too?
The second item is the payment release number 1 for the 2010 Frost Lane project. Again, for the record and the public, this is a project on Frost Lane which is being jointly worked on and paid for by Newtown Township and Newtown Borough. All council members should have before them a letter from the borough engineer, which in turn, actually an email, which in turn provides a letter from Newtown Township that confirms that work has been done and that the first payment to the contractor is now ready to be authorized in the amount of $61,636.50. And I will note that the Board of Supervisors in Newtown, I'm advised, did approve this same payment on Monday night, last night.
Okay. And this is the total cost of the payment that would go to the contractor, of which 50%, the borough would be billed 50%.
That is correct. All payments made are jointly approved by the borough and township. Payment cannot be made unless we both agree on it. So the engineers of the township and the borough have both looked at this. As I say, the township has already approved it, and the motion tonight would be to make the first payment of that amount for Frost Lane project.
You've made that motion?
Yes.
Okay. May I have a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? No? Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to weigh in on this? Okay. If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
If I may, I have one additional item which did just come in late this afternoon on the handicap ramps for State and Washington, if I could address that under engineers. The borough engineer advises that the plans were received and reviewed by her for the water company project completion, which is the handicap ramps at that intersection. There are some very, very minor technical items which are being worked out with the design, but it is otherwise ready now to go to PennDOT and be submitted by Gannett Fleming with the request jointly that work be completed before the onset of the cold weather. And that's just by way of status. No other action is required this evening.